This episode of Super Boothers is brought to you by the Photobooth Expo in Las Vegas this coming March 12th to March 14th, 2018 at the Westgate Hotel and Casino. Visit photoboothexpo.com and use promo code SUPERB2018 for a key pass or SUPERB2018E for an exhibits-only pass. See you there.
Welcome to Super Boothers. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Ismail, and today we are fortunate to be joined by the man of many hats, Meir Israel. Meir, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
How's it going?
It's going well, thanks. How are you guys?
We're good. So tell everyone what it is that you do.
Okay, I am the CEO of the South Beach Photo Booth Company here in South Florida. I have been in the event industry for, I just did the math here, 18 years. Overall, and started out in event photography, shooting weddings, bar mitzvahs, things of that nature. And the photo booth company kind of was one of those side projects. Like we decided, hey, we're just gonna buy a photo booth and see how it goes. And that company now has its 8-year anniversary, for it. And that's essentially like my main company, aside from a few other side items that we do overall. But it's a pretty cool gig that we got going on down here in South Florida. We're kind of a little well known for doing some interesting things in our local area.
And is that all you're involved in? Because I think that there's another company that you recently started, the Backdrops. Are you involved with that as well?
I am. I've got a lot of items, probably too many in that regard. The three main companies that I do in the event industry are in respective form, my photo booth company, my gaming rental company, and my photography studio. In respect to the photo booth industry, we have, of course, Backdrops to Go, which is a kind of a side service that we provide for a lot of our other fellow boothers within the industry itself, and of course the all-important Photo Booth Professionals International, which is myself, Francis Foreman, Lisa Oler, Dave Stevenson, and Cherie Irwin started that for it, and we're coming up, of course, on number 2 for Academy next January. We're very excited about.
And how do you manage all of that?
I have no kids.
I'm assuming there's apps involved too.
There are, yeah. It's a lot of apps. It's a lot of delegation. Delegation is probably one of the most important things that I ever learned over the years. So having staff that can support all of your wild and wacky dreams when you're ADD like me and you like to get distracted by too many things really helps out. So having an in-studio staff to just kind of take a lot of the load of all the stuff that you need to do really helps out greatly.
So I'm curious because I relate to that ADD thing that you just said. How do you measure what's worth getting into if you're already doing so much? Do you look at the people involved? Are you looking to work with partners, investors? How do you determine what's worth your time when you're already spread so thin?
It's a great question because every year is a little bit different, and sometimes I find that what you spread yourself out for is something that you did because either you had the time because you weren't doing stuff, or just because you could, and it's something that worked in real easy to your normal logistics. By example, the gaming company we started because we have this weird reputation in the South Florida area to be asked for a lot of wild and wacky things that are usually like, the typical, hey, Meir, we saw this at a bar mitzvah in New York. Can you do it? And that's usually how that conversation starts and continues. And we figured in our brilliance that large gaming rentals would be an easy adjustment for us, a lateral change, for us to also provide and bring in some additional income on like other days that we're not doing it because we do so much corporate work and we do so many bar mitzvahs and things like that. It just made logistical sense in regards to things like the backdrops and whatnot, because it was a logistics that we were already doing with the amount that we were doing for ourselves. It just made a lot of sense to just, open up an online store, be support for, those other folks with whom have their own companies, but want to basically delegate out that portion of it so they can just continue working on their own business and making money on what they need to do and so forth. But every now and then, as I mentioned, we just celebrated an 8-year anniversary for the photo booth company alone. Every now and then you got to look back at your overall picture and then just see what's the percentage, how much is it doing what's coming in? How can you improve? And then is that improvement going to cost more than it's going to be worth? Or
So
is it
whenever
going to be something, great long term?
whenever you, I guess, like, let's say like we're going to add, a new service or whatever, does that go under one umbrella, or are we starting like another little company that, we're just a part of? Like, how does that work?
Like a product or like a service?
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, like the gaming stuff, is it gaming stuff within one umbrella, or is it its own separate company?
It's supposed to be its own separate company, but everybody emails me at one email anyway. So
that is so interesting, because I still do flowers, and I just had to put flowers on my website. So on my photobooth website, there's a little button at the bottom that says flowers, and it's just, I mean, people just associate you with it. So I've tried to separate it, and I'm just curious as to what other people are doing.
Well, part of that goes back to the topic at hand, which is, of course, the networking, because the networking puts a persona and a brand on things. It makes a personal connection with your contacts, and they just generally associate you with it. So unless you're going so far as to have salespeople for that particular brand, as I currently, don't, but will, it will always be that way until I say, okay, my new salesperson, you are only in the gaming, world, and you're going to rent games, and here's all your contacts, and here's what you need to propagate, and so forth. So that's what works for that. Currently, yeah, I'd like to say that it should be that way. In my world, I would like it if it was, but because I've created a personal relationship with people and they know who to call upon, they call upon me, in general, and my company for start, just because they don't want to have to look up a whole nother email address and phone number and stuff like that for it. And almost in that grand scheme, you want to make sure that your personal connection is more important than the brand connection, just because all the matter that you're getting the business rather than not. In an ideal world, I would love it if it was like, yeah, Hollywood Gameworks and South Beach Photo Booth Company, they're two separate companies, that can operate independent of one another if need be. It's cool right now, so it's working.
What's your perspective on people that feel you can do so much more and be more successful if you focus in on one business at a time? I think you had a good comment before about a lot of these things kind of supplement what you're doing, or you're already doing them, so the cost of it is not too great. But how do you feel generally for, let's say, people listening out there who are advised to focus on one thing and see someone like you doing multiple things and it's working for you? How do you advise people think about that?
I want to give good advice and say this doesn't work for everybody in regards to spreading things, too thin. With us, with what we don't do a great multitude of events. We are performing for what we are called upon to do. Despite the fact that we have so many things that we can perform, we generally perform them in a premium manner. So what that means is we are really fighting tooth and nail every presentation, every event, every time that we go out, so that things are as perfect as the situation allows for when we perform it. In that particular sense, I absolutely admire anybody with whom concentrates and does specific things, or are known for a specific output or look or whatever they do, because there is an absolute honing of the craft for what it is. Most people that I know, however, that do a great amount of a specific item, they do deviate a little bit, but not in the extent of what we do here with it. And by no means am I a great example of oh, look, we're doing all these things. I know people who are doing 50 times more stuff than we are, overall, for it. But it all depends on how much you want to devote to what you're doing and how much of your time and space that you can do. Because to perform in a manner, to this capacity, you need to do and have a lot of stuff. I've got a 3,700 square foot warehouse to house all my photo booths and all my gaming stuff and, my vehicles and things like that. I've got a staff of, 20 to call upon to do and to perform these events. Well, this is full time for us and my staff. It's not I've got a regular job and, we do this on the weekends, or we answer emails at night. This is, I get emails at 6:30 in the morning from some of my corporate planners, knowing that I haven't started my day, but really expecting an answer by 10 o'clock that morning. And if I haven't gotten an answer, they're calling me,
Yeah.
To do it. So it's one of those things where if you are doing one particular thing and you're extremely successful at it, and so forth, if there is an issue that you feel you're having in regards to what your return is, be it the amount of free time you're still hoping to have from it, or the money, which are both of those are probably related, in that grand scheme, really analyze like what it is that your customers and your clients want out of what you're doing, or see if it's what you want out of what you're doing too. For that. And maybe just, it never hurts to always look at things from a perspective and say, maybe I should charge more. Because I have to be completely honest with you, gentlemen. Every time we do something new, even if I think at the very beginning I charge appropriately for it, most of the time afterwards, after we've performed that and we've gotten all the kinks out, we've dotted the I's, we've crossed the T's, et cetera, and we're done and we've packed up.
Yeah, you actually paid them
off-site. Yeah, it's like you got paid, but at the same time, you're like...
Yeah, how much?
New cost eval on that one.
The big thing is you're making money, but how much of it are you keeping? So I think that a lot of your business comes from referrals now.
Almost 98%.
How much of that is like event industry referrals, like planners and catering managers and that sort of thing?
Pretty much all of it.
Yeah. So you're a part of ILEA?
ILEA currently, also MPI.
That's Meeting Planners International and International Live Events Association?
Correct.
So they originally was ISIS, and they changed it for obvious reasons.
So I actually did some research and asked a lot of the leaders in the industry what to ask you. And it was by far unanimous. Everybody said that you were a master networker. And I think from the numbers that you just said, it seems clear that a lot of your business comes from networking and referrals. What is your general sense? Like if people come up to you and ask you, how do I become a better networker? What do I do? How should I think about it? What would you tell them?
Kiss a lot of babies. So the thing about networking, of course,
I thought you were going to say something else other than babies. I was like,
Baby.
well, same thing. That works too.
It all works. The most important thing about networking, and this is for any event professional, not just photo boothers, but the most important thing about networking is presence. It's being present, not only when you're there, but also returning, because the whole point of our event industry in this crazy time when everyone's like, oh, how many Instagram followers should I have? What should my Facebook page be like? What should I be doing to get the word out there? The event industry is turning on such a dime every day in regards to new techniques, new trends, clients these days just booking things at the very last minute. Other event professionals want what you want. They want their job to be easy. And in doing so, that means they want to know people that they can call upon very quickly for quotes or needs or partnerships, or people that they can refer their own great clients to. Sometimes the most important thing that you could do for yourself and for them is to just be present. And that just means very simply showing up to a networking meeting once a month so that your face is seen and people know what you do. It doesn't matter how talented you are at what you're doing. You're going to find somebody in that same circle of service that you provide, for it. Not every event is like $1 million event. There's like $30,000 weddings and so forth, on up.
This is also a big thing is that one of my friends, he's a real estate broker. And whenever he just was a regular agent, he says that in his industry, and I believe this applies to us too, whenever you work with people consistently, like catering managers and planners, you have to touch them at least 50 times a year, whether that's a text message, Facebook Messenger, commenting on something on their Facebook, a phone call, running into them, all that stuff really does play a part and keep you top of mind. And, if they associate you with one thing, like it's photo booths, generally they won't think of you for anything else. So I think that's a really huge thing that you've kind of hit the nose on here.
Mm-hmm. And your comment about just showing up and being present took me back to a college professor I had many, many years ago who had the same advice where he said, half of the job is just showing up. Just show up to class and half the work is done. And that kind of stuck with me through the years because I found that to be true in a lot of other instances where just by showing up, things happen, right? Kind of like what you were touching on before with the networking events.
It really does. It's everything about whom it is, where you're seeing them, because any person that's been in the event industry for 5 years or longer knows that you could have a great connection with one catering manager for a really long time, catering managers move like
every
all
2
the
years
time.
is a common thing.
It's just, they're looking for the BBD, the bigger, better deal, wherever it is, wherever they're going. And then this great thing you had at like the Four Seasons, wherever you are, and you're real excited about it, and it brought in a lot of revenue for you. Suddenly that catering manager is gone. Yep. They don't know who you are. It's not that they hate you. It's just they don't know you. And the person with whom you had a relationship with, now you've got to make sure you're keeping in contact with this person. Is that person still at capacity to refer you because of what they're doing now and where they're at, and so forth. So networking is a constant need because you are putting your business in the hands of others as well for it. So you definitely always need to make sure your partnerships are fresh.
I think that a majority of our listeners, maybe not a majority, but a good chunk of them have told me that they're very introverted and they have a problem with, going to networking events and stuff. If you had someone that was right in front of you and said, "Hey, listen, I'm super introverted. How do I do this?" What like going to like an ILEA meeting or something, like what would you tell them?
I have the best advice for this, and this is going to sound really dumb and stupid. I have, I'm actually holding it in my hand right now. I have a thing called an iDigiTag. So this is a name badge that can either play still images or video images as a name badge on your chest. So if you're introverted, if you don't know what to do with your hands, and that's why you're holding and sipping on that wine, that's been provided thanks to your 2-ticket minimum as you walk through that door, it's more important to then approach it like, let me bring people to me if I'm too shy to go to them, and strike up a conversation. Because you also need to remember, not everybody at that meeting is good at networking either. So that's okay that you're feeling introverted. Half of that room is as well. They are very interested in meeting you and hearing what you have to say, but it is really important to have a thing that gets that ball rolling, especially if you go to a networker where maybe that program that night is not really specific or laid out, for a direct kind of interaction, with people. Not everything you're going to do is going to be like a speed networker or a design star, themed event night or something like that. So it's really great to do it. Every time I wear this wonderful little device upon my lapel, I always get approached. Now, the majority of the time, the wonderful phrase that people will say to me is, "Oh my God, do you sell those?" And I have to, of course, say in the negative, I do not. But it brought someone over to me, and it got them talking to me directly in a very interested and curious manner. I do not sell them. I tell them that. But then they're like, "Oh, well, what do you do?" Because now they're embarrassed, which goes back to the whole, that's okay, guys. If you're feeling introverted, they're feeling introverted too. And then you just start with some very simple questions. What's your name? What company are you with? That's great. Tell me more about what you do. And then just kind of let that ball, go rolling from there. You shouldn't expect to see and know everyone's like kids' names at the end of your first networking meeting, or even remember faces and stuff like that. But it's just a good way to get things started, for that, because it is real hard.
My absolute favorite thing to do is to like find like the little girl like sipping her little cocktail in the corner because she doesn't know anyone, because she's new to the city. She just took most likely a catering job. "Hi, hello, my name is Ryan. What do you do?" And then she's like, "Oh, thank you so much," and tells me about what's going on with her. Those relationships that have started like that, I remember I did that my first day of college, and I am still friends with that person to this day. And it's very, there's something about very empowering about being the one to initiate that conversation.
Yes.
I was just going to say the same thing, that a tip I found that works very well, and it touches on what Meir was saying too, about people also being uncomfortable there. Look for those people that are alone and seem uncomfortable and seem introverted, and approach them. And they view you as saving them, right? Yep. So you kind of collect all these people. You seem like the savior, and then you're building connections with those people as well.
Well, and that person is going to remember you for the rest of their career as that person that walked over and said, "Hi, hello, my name is."
Mm-hmm. So, one other thing that I do is I have a networking buddy. Networking is upkeep for your business's health, much like going to the gym. And sometimes you need someone to help you motivate and to motivate
it's
them.
A wingman.
Yes, exactly. It's a wingman. So I have a couple of networking wing buddies. And sometimes when I want to go and explore a newer networking group that sounds cool in theory, but if I need to like fall back on someone who's there so that I feel out how they think this is going too, so I'm not just being super snotty. And I'm like, hey, is this good? Are you meeting anybody? And they're like, no, so if we could do it, or it's also good, just like what you just said, Ismail, as a wingman, you need a hype person, and you need someone to talk you up, so that they can tell this new person who you are and how great you are and what you do, and you can do the same thing for them.
This is a great trick. There's a scene in Father of the Bride. Have you seen it? So there's one where Franck, which is played by Martin Short, who's the wedding planner, and then his assistant. Someone goes up to his assistant and says, "Hi, are you Franck?" And he goes, "No, I wish. I used to have one of my friends do that. Hi, are you right? No, I wish." Right.
And that's exactly what works out for it, in that particular sense. And you do it enough so that you get comfortable and you get talking to other people, but then don't stay together, because obviously you two know each other. You know what each other do. It's then great to start branching out so that both of you can start getting better contacts. However, speaking of wingmen, if we're going on the dating analogy, treating it like a bar, which we should, because this works, do not throw yourself at people either, because it looks freaking desperate. Like I've seen, and I've done it, like I did it myself one time, for that. You find a catering manager and you've never met him before, and maybe they're at like some kind of illustrious kind of property, and you're like, "Oh my God, my name's Meir. What's your name? I own this photo booth company. We do great stuff. You guys are great. We worked at your property." It freaks people out. It seriously freaks people out.
That's another thing, is that whenever you are like, you bring your wingman, you start off the evening together, you have to be careful not to stay together, because then at that point you become unapproachable, and then that really defeats the purpose, because they say, "Oh, well, that's their little clique already." So like you have to be really like conscious of how often you're hanging around someone.
So I think this is something that people really do struggle with, as Ryan touched on before, and because I also think Ryan is also good at this. I've seen him in action. He's great at building relationships, and as Meir said, 98% of his business comes from networking. What other tips do you have for people? Like, for example, I actually heard an anecdote about you that someone said that the first time they met you, after they met you, you sent a gift, and that made you stick out to them, and even to this day they remember that gift. I'm curious to know, like, do you consciously do that as a way to gain favor, or is it just something natural that you do? Like, are you thinking strategically about developing these relationships and doing it that way, or is it just a natural thing that you've trained yourself to do?
It's one of those things that I've trained myself and my staff to do, because I believe that my staff is probably the penultimate extension of my business. They're the first ones that people encounter. So of course I want my staff happy, and I do as much for my staff as I possibly can. Leading out from there, it's your event contacts and your event vendors, because it's twofold. We are in an industry where we all give up so much of a very precious part of our free time to our clients, in doing so. And sometimes while our clients pay us, they don't necessarily say thank you. So it's nice to come at it from another vendor standpoint and say thank you, either for the business or for their time or for making something easy in that particular, grand scheme. So it's great to come at it that way and to just let somebody know, especially from a business standpoint, what you're doing, because business sounds very cold and calculated sometimes, and it's really hard when you can't just inappropriately hug somebody all the time to let them know you really care for what they're doing and you care for their time and the effort that they put into stuff for that. So in one sense, yeah, I absolutely do do that strategically, because I want people to know that they are a strategic partner for me, and my life is better because of them. So why not do that? And it's the same thing when we do it for any of our like holiday gifts, when we're really re-romancing any of our industry.
I was just going to ask you to touch on that, because I think I remember seeing something, if I remember correctly, it was like a Netflix and chill or popcorn.
Yep.
How do you, I guess you calendar that each year at the same time, and you just try to come up with something creative that's in at that moment? How do you go about doing that?
So I learned a quick lesson a long time ago, which was don't do holiday gifts, because you're just going to get lumped in the pile with everyone else, for it. You're going to get a fruit basket and a card from everybody, and you're going to be like, wow, this person got me a fruit basket and a card. They really don't care about me because it's a fruit basket and a card. They're not even mean it ironically, in a funny way. So the lesson was go outside that. Pick a holiday that no one else is doing. So consecutively for every year, we just randomly chose a holiday that was preferably 7 to 10 months away from the last one that we did. So if we did happen to do Valentine's one year, let's say, you could totally do Thanksgiving as a random holiday, next time around. If you did, Cinco de Mayo one year, you could do a summer one, the following, but you would try not to do do a summer one and then do a fall one, for it, or do something crazy like, do Valentine's and then the next one is like Groundhog Day because they're too close in the months. You don't want to be gifting people too much because then it just looks like you have too much money and you're, just thanking them all the time, for it. So the idea is not just to say, hey, it's Valentine's Day, we heart you. It's like, be a little brazen, and be a little, funky with it and stuff like that. So the last most notable one that everybody loved because it was so cheeky was the Netflix and chill one. We did one prior to that, which was Cinco de Mayo. We sent everybody little margarita kits and so forth. And we did do another one which was Groundhog Day. And, we just had the card, have a message, and then it repeated 5 times. So people got, the joke for what it was. And the gifts were a little bit more specific, to it. Netflix and chill was obviously a subscription card to Netflix and some popcorn. And we had some champagne in there too, because romanticism. And, the other one for Groundhog Day was a lot more chocolate covered nuts and, things that a groundhog would enjoy, for that. And just themed cards. The point is to be memorable. So it goes back to the networking.
That's the thing is with Christmas, everyone knows that they're going to get cookies or, something stupid. And whenever you're in the events industry, Christmas and Thanksgiving don't exist. I really have to struggle to go shopping and stuff. I am not about to go to a vendor and bring over something around the area of Christmas. I do a party once a year in San Antonio for all of my catering managers and DMCs and people that really give me a lot of business. And I mean a lot of business, and this is all recurring. I don't want to really give them a gift. I think that's a little bit impersonal. I've always been the one to give experiences. And one thing that I do is I do a party in January. I book a riverboat and I invite them all for dinner. It is no holiday. It's really kind of turned into my Who Gives a F party. That's what it's called. It's where everyone is able to come and really enjoy each other and have the time because everyone is working like crazy over the holidays. So to do something, off season is incredibly important. I mean, it's kind of like getting flowers, on a Tuesday.
For sure. Anything that you could do, to make yourself stand out is really, really important, to really reflect your brand. And the thing, with the holiday gifts, for instance, we can get away with that because we've always been a brand of fun and excitement and a little bit of darker humor, we'll call it. So people kind of expect that from us and they think it's funny. One year we actually, for a private set of wedding planners, because, it's Miami. It's a very sexy town as it's perceived, right? And all the really, cool wedding planners in Miami at the time, are between the ages of 26 to 30 for the second time in a row. And, we also did Valentine's that year too, but we sent them I forget what the whole package was, but they were were Victoria's Secret gift cards in there, as well, for it. And it's not that's not a thing that everyone would always try to get away with. I don't know if, any of my fellow friends in the St. Louis area are going to do that, for their wedding planners, but Miami, we could totally pull it off.
I get away with that with stuff like that in Vegas. I mean, it's just granted, I can get away with a lot of things that most people can. I think Ismail and I have already established this. So just changing gears a little bit, one of the things that seems to always come up is giving away a free photo booth. Whenever you're involved in, any industry organization, you kind of get roped into doing stuff for free. What's your opinion on that?
If we're discussing the networking events, absolutely positively always say yes to those networking events, be it just a regular monthly chapter meeting, be it their board's installation, be it more of a industry holiday party, if maybe that one networking chapter is combining with others that are in the area. These are the perfect times to be sponsoring your booth to get in front of an extremely large, extremely calculated audience. These are the people you want to be talking to. These are the people that you want to see and want to experience what you do. And also, we're in the hospitality industry. People don't understand that all of us don't necessarily get hospitality all the time. So it's nice to treat your fellow vendors to this kind of stuff so they can see what you do with it. On my own advice, it's also a great time to experiment because no one's paying you to be there, which means you get to decide. This is what you think the return is worth. So if you want to go out there and do some crazy animated GIF that you think would go with that meeting's theme, make it. Do it. Show someone this crazy thing that you're hoping to get a premium for in that particular sense. But definitely explore those chapters first. Make sure it's the group that you are within. Make sure it's the price point that you operate in parallel to or hopefully above, in some sense, because we all, of course, want some kind of, lateral leverage, to raise ourselves up over the years and things like that. Those are really great to do. There are, of course, others that you really should examine if they're good for you overall.
How do you do that examination? I think that's what I'm curious. Even like you said before, what if there's a small local chamber of commerce event? Like, how do you examine what is actually?
I think you have to look at the attendant or the attendees and who's actually like coming to this thing. Like, is this group going to bring me money? No,
you absolutely should. Are you gentlemen familiar with BNI?
No.
Business Network International. It is a very successful networking organization where each chapter within your local city, you have to be accepted by those chapters. They only take one person per profession within their chapters. There is, of course, a fee for membership. And then, of course, it's usually a breakfast. So they start really early in the morning, and then, people do their stuff, and they track
for that reason.
I know. I couldn't stick around with it either because I'm very nocturnal myself. But like they track all of their referral money because you tell your entire chapter, hey, I got this referral from this person this week, and it was worth X amount of dollars for what it was. So really successful chapters are tracking 1 million to 15 million in business that all of their members are doing per year. Now, it's a very roundabout way to get to this one specific part about what is very important about how they teach you how to build up those chapters. And this then relates to things like Chamber of Commerce and other things of the like. They call certain groupings within the chapter power teams, because a BNI structure is based upon you absolutely positively need an attorney, you need a realtor, you then need a commercial realtor, you need an accountant, and then every other profession follows from that. Now, if you are the only photographer within that core group and you're not, let's say, doing real estate photography, you're not going to get any business from that accountant, that real estate person, that attorney, etc., things like that. However, if you're in a chapter where there's a caterer, there's a florist, there's a DJ in it, there's someone who does chocolate fountains, a cake person, etc., that aside from the other, let's say 25 to 45 people within your chapter, that's your power team. That's the people who you're getting the most referrals from. So in relation to a chamber of commerce, even a chamber of commerce within your local area, and it's always great to support your city and your business on a local level. If that chamber of commerce, even if they had 75 people in there, but you were one of two persons within your specific portion of the industry, you really have to decide, is that going to be worth my time to do that? Because I can tell you there's tons of other networking associations that are out there. And I try to explore different stuff all the while because, sometimes it's a numbers game. Where I was talking about my networking wingman buddies, we will go to different networkers to see if it's worthwhile. We have one on the horizon that we're going to check out because it's supposed to be super cool. And it's very millennial style where it's you pay $2,000 to be a member, but you're a member for life. And they do all this cool stuff, go to Marlins games and, crazy things, but I want to go there and see what it's like because we've been to other ones where it seems like every third person is Mary Kay or Amway. And you're I got to get out of here. This isn't for me. I don't know what I'm doing here, for this kind of stuff.
But
so
the
people, man, I'm more of an Arbonne guy if we're going for more of the male line of things for some stuff. But, definitely the people is where it's at.
Thanks so much to LA Photo Party for supporting Super Boothers. They're the creators of Venture, a lightweight yet powerful photo booth in a sleek body with ample branding space. Its single carrying case and quick assembly make it ideal for traveling. And try their easy-to-use software, Photobooth Upload, and access features from the industry's leader in virtual reality, light painting, morphs, and more. Super Boothers listeners get $200 off Photobooth and 10% off a Photobooth Upload lifetime license with promo code SuperBoothers. For more information and a free trial, visit laphotoparty.com.
So what about Jimmy, who's listening to this right now and says, you know what, you sold me. I want to go network at these events. How would you advise he reach out to these local chambers of commerce or things like that? And I think there's also an opportunity for double dipping here because a lot of these networking events are held at venues. So you can network with the venue and the networking organization. But how would you advise someone to take those initial steps to get in the door and start networking?
You got to... Yeah, absolutely. You buy a ticket and you go. The biggest holdback, going back to the whole portion where people are just concerned about how they're introverted. Before that, their other concern is, I don't know if I have the time. Like these are always held at night. Like I've got kids, I got this, I got that.
Some are lunches.
Some are luncheons, and some are breakfast. And definitely go to the luncheons because those are just primo, for sure. But the phrase I learned from a wonderful gentleman by the name of John Goolsby, who's a videographer, very well known nationally, especially on the speaking level, is if you think you don't have time to network, don't worry, you will. And then you think about that and you're like, oh, okay, I got it. You can only get so far by new clientele that are unreferred and unqualified. After a while, to have a sustaining business, you need verified qualified referrals and you need vendor partnerships. So the most important thing that you can do is to just go to these networking meetings and see if they're a right fit for you, if you're a right fit for it, and if you just work into that world. The ones that I belong to, between the type and style of chapters that they're very different. One is extremely corporate. Like if you're as a gentleman not wearing a jacket to the meeting, you look out of place in one regard. In another one, we're all doing some extremely crazy and creative corporate events and other social events, out of this other group that we're referred from. But, like we hug when we say hello. Like it's, you absolutely have to say goodbye to everybody, when the meeting's over.
It takes 30 minutes to say
and
goodbye.
Thank everyone else for coming. Yeah, exactly. So it is the kind of thing where you just got to get out there and you got to do it and you just got to be cool about it. You just got to, know who you're down for and make a good presentation of who you are in a professional manner. And you just be, just see which one it is before you pay that $500 or $600, for the year. Go there, pay $45 or $65 or whatever it is, and just hang out and see what they're doing and see what they're all about.
That's another thing is that it's really important to not sell at these things. Like, even if you are doing an ILEA chapter meeting, you're donating your photo booth, people will come up and say how much and just be like, oh, you can give them roundabout pricing or email me or whatever. But this is your chance to really say what you can do, not really how much you're going to charge them for it. Like, I always like to look at it from solving a problem point of view. Like, oh, we have this client, we don't know what to do with them. And then that's your opportunity to come up with something cool that's just for them. And even if it's not just for them, there could be some element that is just for them. So a green screen, you could have something that's specific to that particular client.
For sure. And again, going back to, if you do have an opportunity, once you do become a member of any of these chapters, always offer to sponsor at any given point in time. It is not a snob fest, for the majority of chapters that you'll ever see on a national or possibly international level, as well. A lot of persons like myself, as the vice president of programs, they want sponsors all the time. That just makes their job easier, and it makes the program more full for these chapter meetings. So offer up as often as you can, but try to be different and distinct as often as you can.
Absolutely.
As well, because that's going to help
these
you stand
people
out,
see
for sure.
regular photo booths all the time. So if you bring a photo booth that says, oh, look, this thing can print double strips, they're not really going to care. So this is your chance to really do something crazy, batshit, completely off the wall. Oh my God, this is so cool.
Yes. And after a while, you'll have a team, like you'll have a posse, and they'll come to bat for you and they'll talk to other people about you and things like that. And, I always welcome other persons within our industry, for it. And there are people who think I'm cool, down here, but don't necessarily work with me all the time. And that's okay. But because the other people that do think I'm badass, they will absolutely come to bat for me all the time. And it's like, oh no, you have to use Meir and his team. Like they're doing this, they're doing that. Like they have this thing that's doing this, they'll always describe it like completely incorrectly, but it doesn't matter. Their excitement showing.
As long as they're talking about you, that's what matters, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
One other thing that I got from a lot of people was, I guess because you're friends with everybody and you're good at networking, you knew a lot of the history of the industry, companies that have come and gone, the ins and outs of things that have worked and have not worked. So I'm curious to hear, what is your take on where you think things are going, or lessons that you've learned from observing the comings and goings of other companies?
It's a great question. I've seen a lot of companies go because they treat things like a mom and pop ideal. I say that, of course, coming from a pretty blue collar background myself, with working in a family business, just like all of my brothers and sister did for it. So I come from a place where all the kids worked for mom and dad. So it's not like I grew up in like this. I was taught to really charge a premium, and it is what it is. No. It's the kind of thing where if you're not charging appropriately for your services, and if you haven't done a cost evaluation, a business plan, a roadmap for yourself, and you don't know what you plan on doing, you are going to go under within about 2 years. One of the finest examples of that was when we started our company. We decided at the time we were going to have 3 products. Which is hilarious once I think about how many things we could do now. One of those products was flipbooks, and one of the local vendors to us had it already, and I had no idea. They called to quote unquote congratulate us on getting it, and basically said, "Good luck, gentlemen, start your engines," per se, for what it was. They ended up confiding in me probably a little too much, than they should have. And after about 2 years, they realized with their accountant that despite investing, untold thousands and performing, I believe they performed something like 172 events in 1 year, their net income from that event space was $15,000 overall. So 172 events. Anybody can just sit here and do the math on what they're, I guess, but to do, that many events, within a year, for it, because you're talking about a minimum of, 2 3/4 per weekend, is what they're doing.
And those flipbooks are not easy.
They're a flipping nightmare.
Absolutely not. Yeah. For all that they were doing, for all their, for all the worth, for all of the heartache, of printers jamming and trimmers and staff calling out at the last minute, and, losing, you lose a prop that's like $20 or $40, like that was literally your profit for that day, for what it was, so for someone to say like, oh yeah, we want to be a value added service, value added for who? Value added for yourself or value added for, your client? Because you've got to really make that distinction. You are being paid for hours of your life. That's what you have to think about, in that grand scheme. So either you're doing it or your employees are doing it. If you're someone who's got like 10 teams or more, and you're charging like the $150 to $200 an hour, and you're making back for it in volume, great. That's a good viable business. You're doing that. If you are, just like someone who's a spousal couple of any way, shape, or form, and that's what you're doing, for it, that's the biggest thing that I've seen. That's people just kind of not understanding what their own time is worth, and there's no growth there. There will be no growth there for you.
So I always like to harp on knowing your numbers and the importance of knowing your numbers. How do you advise people figure out the appropriate pricing?
You take this is the starting out pricing. This is before you get to a place like where we're at, where you have like actual hard bills that need to get covered like all the time, no matter what it is. You take what it costs you, then you tack on what you want to make from it realistically, and you have to be extremely honest with that cost. You have to put in there what your employees got to make. You got to put in there what your prints could potentially cost you. You got to put in like how much that booth cost you on average over, let's say, 10 events, because, 10 events is the average that any booth is going to make you back. I don't care if you're a DIY person. I don't care if you're somebody who bought an Infinite. I don't care if you're somebody who went for a Wilkes booth. You should be making back a booth in 10, let's say 15 events overall, right? You take into account what your insurance costs you, what gas is going to cost, what vehicle costs you if you're renting or if you've purchased one for yourself. And then you take all that cost and you jack it up by another 25% as a just in case money, because that's the other part that people don't really account for, which is just in case. Arbitrarily, you don't want your staff losing your $25 props from Elope that you had to spend, a minimum of $700 on to get that, that wholesale discount. But at the same time, if you lose one or two, or they just get yucky, hey, it's okay because you got that just in case, bill built in there, for it, and just kind of go from there. And then from there, you have to then just say, do I want to make $500 on top of that? Is that what I need to make? Do I want to make $1,000? How many of these events, do I want to do? And how much attention do I want to give to these events and to my clients? And how much of that attention relates to what I'm charging overall? So, many people smarter than I have harped on the need for any person within the industry to really say, hey, if you're only charging like, $200 an hour or $100 an hour and you're going out for like an hour minimum, and so forth, you're really underselling it for yourself, blah, blah, blah. You can't really harp on someone's personal traits overall, too much, or their life. It's their life. It is what it is, and they're going to do what they're going to do. However, no one in the industry can live their life for you. I can't live, someone else's life, and I can't tell someone who's in the Midwest, hey, I'm getting $2,000 for this thing. You should get $2,000 for this
markets
thing.
Are completely separate. One of the things I've learned, it took me a long time. I was in business for about 8 years before I learned this. My accountant sat me down and was like, listen, you need to figure out what you're spending per event. And she gave me a costing sheet that I will have available in the show notes. It is a spreadsheet that you can customize yourself. And what it is it goes out how much your paper costs are, how much your labor cost is, how much you charge to the client, what your margins are. And this is the thing is you really have to know, whenever Ismail says know your numbers, you need to know it in every way, shape, or form, inside and out, forwards and backwards. And before you really know how much you're actually making is where things will kind of change. I did this with, so I did flowers, linens, rentals, photo booth, like all in one. So, I had like, a good chunk of, if it was a wedding, a good chunk of a wedding budget. The big thing here is to know your numbers enough to know your threshold as to when you're become profitable. And this is done on a per event basis. So you can break out the math based on, a number of hours. For example, a hotel that is, priced out at, $129, $149 a night, their cost comes out to about $36 between the toiletries that are in there to change out the linens, all that stuff, the maid to come in to do it. You need to know your numbers just as the same.
This brings me back to the earlier comments that you were making about sending gifts not on the other holidays that everyone else is sending gifts on, but doing it on a different time. And I think that I hope people caught the main message there is there seems to be like a default thinking or mindset of just doing whatever everyone else is doing. Everyone else is sending cookies on Christmas, I'm going to send cookies on Christmas. Everyone else is charging this price, I'm going to charge this price. But I think the takeaway from your comments is look at what works for you. You can't just be copying people left and right. You have to be thoughtful, take a step back, try to be different, and look at what works well for you. And that leads me to my next question that people are always curious about is, what was the best advice you got starting out? Maybe you didn't know it was that good of advice at the time. And what do you think you'd advise people starting out now?
What was the best advice? Delegating. When you're really trying to do something that is, set apart and your mind's going in like 40 different directions, it's good to have staff that you can delegate things to and to help out. Because you cannot have a successful business if you're not doing things in a business-like manner. You cannot have your business grow if you're not, branching out, quite literally, for that kind of stuff. And your staff members are the ones to help you with that. And you're going to go through a lot of staff, especially within what we do, because the majority of staff persons that you're ever going to find for the, the 15 to 35 an hour, that you're probably going to pay somebody, they're going to be college aged. And that's a good fee, that somebody could make that night. Potentially somebody could be making like $300 a night to basically smile at folks and just make sure our printer's working, the whole time. But, it arbitrarily, to do it all yourself, you might not be good at stuff. You might be really bad at a certain thing, or you might have put a lot of work into that event that these 2 martinis into the wind guests aren't seeing, and you yourself start to get a little bitter about it. And you need to go take a nap. You need to go leave that in somebody else's hands is what you got to do. So it really helps to just have a great staff, and the sooner people can do that for themselves, the better, because that's actually the thing that I've seen a lot of folks really want to hold back on, because it's their baby, because it's, I've built this, from the ground up. I have all these, relationships that I've propagated, and things like that. You look like a cooler captain of industry when you have all your ducks in a row and you have a staff that's working for you, when people see that, and people will love and respect that, especially the larger companies that you're hoping to get attention from as well. Because you talk to a corporate planner, any of the larger ones, they have, 4 different departments that all deal with a company's sales force, meaning planning, between the account executives and the creative department and the execution and the day of, and stuff like that. So the closer you look like a business that looks like theirs, the more you're going to get that attention from those folks. And, equally so, it's a lot of perception. It's perception about what you're doing and about what you're also capable of as well. I get more and more larger event inquiries every time someone sees that it's me standing in the background, probably texting on my phone, while I've got like 6 to 10 staff members, entertaining like some 300-person party or whatever it is, going on there, and everything's just locked down.
That's so ironic how that ends up working in your favor. One other thing that I knew you were involved in that you mentioned in the beginning was PBPI.
Yes.
I'd like to hear why you're so passionate about education in our industry, and what your involvement is in PBPI, and why you suggest people would show up to the event.
A rising tide raises all ships is probably one of the most important things that anybody could ever remember within any industry that they're in. And the idea that education is really key, as well as just hearing new and different ideas and seeing what other people are doing, not necessarily employing that exact thing, but just a concept of being able to push yourself forward in what you do and to what anybody can do really helps, because we as an industry, or the industry in general, can kind of get a little demonized very quickly by, this person doesn't think I'm right because of how they're doing it, or, this person doesn't think that, it is viable to have a $1,500, starting price point, or, oh my God, that person thinks $1,500 is the only way to be, they must think I'm crap for charging $800 on average. It's a really good place to go for some face-to-face ideas and some real-world talent to be able to just talk and work out someone else's perspective and just get another perspective from someone. You will learn from someone at any level of whatever you're doing, whether they've been in the industry for 25 years and they do 600 events a year, or if it's someone who is just starting out and they're really trying to carve out their own little niche, their own little name, their own little brand of whatever you have going on for it. So the reason why we started PBPI is we just thought that the industry could benefit highly from professionals that were working, with their fingers in the dirt directly in the photo booth world, rather than from, the outside source of other entertainment factors, or, things that are like a more generalized wedding scope, talking about this one thing that some people can do if they want to, or, any kind of other aspects of it. When I was an admin of PBN, one of the big jokes that I used to share was there's a whole bunch of, and please forgive me everyone in the industry for saying this, angry photographers and angry DJs, because they're are photographers like myself in the past who think, oh, I shoot with a camera. I know how this works. Like, people don't understand, like, it's all about how the image looks and everything like that. And on the analogous, angry DJ side, not that I think all DJs are angry. Let me just specify that right there before you guys get a lot of hate mail.
You got to CYA. You got to make sure you cover
letters.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments on this one. It's more about, like, there's this weird aspect of, both of those vendorships come from the opposing side of imagery and entertainment. And there's this idea that, like, oh, this is really it. Like, we know because this is a part of it. Whereas it's a specialized thing. Like, it's a very specialized, forward thinking item. I do remember, as you guys mentioned, the history of all things. I do remember back in the day, like, emailing Chris Breeze to get, like, a special code attached so I could do a thing on the touchscreen. Like, I paid for, I don't know, some kind of start button that, no one would think about now that the rest of the industry got, after I paid him like 150 bucks or whatever it was.
Whenever we were setting up a photo strip. Now it's just drag and drop. You people don't know how lucky you have it.
Yeah, it's totally, you people don't. You kids, get off my lawn. So, things like that, back in the old days, it was extremely simple. Things were like, oh, photo strips and props. Now you've got persons, within the scope of, the likes of Kelly Williams and Connor Mong and the boys at LA Photo Party and OM Digital and, Foxtails, things like that. You got companies like that. We're all either performing or having to compete with the stuff you see happen at the Met Gala or crazy stuff that you see happen at San Diego Comic-Con or South by Southwest, things where it's like videography, cinematography happening on the spot and someone's calling that a photo booth. Like, that's just, where do you go? Like, who's going to teach you about that? Like, who's going to talk about those topics, rather than saying, well, guys, here's a great thing to talk about why it's good and important to have a website, so, PBPI was based upon the idea of by professionals for professionals. That's what it was for. And that's what it's all about. So that, as the industry changes, Academy gets to change from year to year. And, if you speak to anybody that was at, the first Academy, it was just like such a cool kumbaya kind of experience because you got to talk to everyone. You got to see everybody face to face. There's no like online perceived personas. There was no idea about, what you think of someone's business. You could find out from them. You can talk to them. And then you can just relate to someone on a one-to-one basis about what they do and then garner great ideas from them and trade off, as well. That's what's really important about that level of education, that you have and that you can do. Because once everybody has an understanding of something, not that everybody has to do it the same way, but once everybody has an understanding of something, then the industry gets elevated every time that happens. And every time people come together and do, those
back
kinds
to
of
the
things.
Rising tide. It's the rising tide.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what would you rather, our software providers and all of the photo booth industry have a greater understanding about how microsites work and what you can do to, convert your output and what restrictions you have as an industry and ways to overcome them? Or are we going to talk about how boas are shedding on the floor? Like, what sounds like it's going to elevate your business and your understanding and managing your clients' expectations a little greater? Not to say that it's not important to know about feathers on the floor. I'm not saying that for that. People sometimes really love their boas, and that's cool for that. But that's kind of where we're at, with it, because we do, we felt it was a cool thing to do, and it's a lot of work. I got to be honest with you guys; it is a ton of work getting this thing together and all the behind the scenes. We thank all of our sponsors for all that they do. When they put it together, we thank absolutely all of our instructors last year, and I know that this year is going to be, even crazier. But we get to roll with the tide. Like, now we're seeing this like real big inception of iOS and iPad based photo booths, falling into the fray. And they're finding their place and people are curious about how they can use them and what they can do with them and things like that. And that's what we get to do. Like on a yearly basis, we get to like look at the industry and go, okay, what are we going to devote a humongous chunk of? Because people want to know and people should know what they can do with the thing and what they probably need to look out for, as well. Like what's great about it, what's the pitfalls for it, things like that. So it's just important, to do this kind of stuff because online sourcing and the hive mind is great, but you got a lot of people that come in and out, as well too. And it's great to just pull all this information and all this knowledge together, for it and just have it and do it and, just kind of get it out there in the world.
Yeah. And I think that's something Ryan and I really resonate with as well, because that's what we're trying to do with this show. We're trying to help educate and raise the bar for the whole industry. And I actually met some people, I believe last year was the first year that you guys did the event. I met some people that attended that event and they were raving about it. So I definitely think it's worth people checking out. I believe this year is going to be in Texas. And I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank you, Meir, for coming on the show. I think this was extremely valuable. I hope people took a lot of notes and use the knowledge to help grow their business.
Meir, thank you so much for joining us.
Again, guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Meir for joining us today. You can check out PBPI. It is this January 21st through 24th in Dallas, Texas. Visit their website at pbpi.org. Also, if you're in the New York area on August 24th, come join us for a night in Gotham. Tickets are $75 and are available at superboothers.com. And Superboothers is also coming to Dallas on September 25th, so mark your calendars. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.